Don't you worry, you're not sitting in your seats exactly where you are for long. Okay. Morena kia ora katoa. Welcome to day 2, looking at the long-term plan. Today is the day about the consultation and engagement. So we have a few apologies. Councillor Burt and Councillor Booth had prior engagements, and Councillor Scott is running a bit late. For our online watchers, my name is Vinci Belante, the long-term plan project lead. I am going to go around the council table so that everybody can introduce themselves so we know who was here this morning. Okay, and we'll start with Councillor Parker.
Kia ora, Councillor Parker.
Kia ora, Councillor Owen Jackson.
Kia ora, Stacey Scott.
Kia ora, Councillor Gavin Oliver.
Good morning, Councillor Scott Shannon.
Good morning, Councillor Michelle Pye.
Stu Piddington. Nigel Bowen.
Okay. And of course, to my left, we have the Chief Executive, Nigel Traynor. I will ask councillors, we had some feedback from yesterday that when you are speaking into the microphone, can you please make sure that you're at a good distance where we can actually pick it up, because sometimes people can't hear what it is you're saying, and there's some really good conversation happening. So we just want to make sure that we capture it all. So about the distance that I am, and project your voice to the microphone and not down to your chest. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so for this morning, a very brief introduction, and then we're actually going to go into our consultation document outline, and this is just the very high-level outline as to what we will need to cover. And then we're actually going to look at the some of the design aspects, the look and feel of the document. We will then move into the engagement strategy and implementation of that, and we have some group activities that we will be doing. And when I say group activities, that it also includes the SLT and activity managers sitting within the room who will be joining the elected members for some of these activities this morning. And then we will be looking at the key issue and discussion, what it is that will actually be basing and going out to the community as what are the issues and opportunities, okay? And then time for questions at the end. Now, this may not take the whole of the 5 hours today, really dependent on how much we actually get in our group activities, in that we just want to make sure by the end of the day that we can really define the content of the consultation document, the basis of it, and looking at your ideas for the engagement, what you want to do, who you want to talk to, and the mechanisms that we can actually use, and where your comfort levels are. Okay. So I may actually invite Megan Taylor to come to the table right now, because we're going to talk a wee bit about the design, our front page. We talked about yesterday that we're looking at bougie on a budget, so we're really talking about if we're going to the community with, we're really focusing on the essentials and the core basics and the cutting our cloth, that our theme being it's about balance will also show that we're actually balancing our budget for the long-term plan as well, and putting the money where it really needs to go. And when it comes to our design and our presentation, we're looking for something that's very tasteful, but not over the top or going to look like we've spent a lot of money on just the frivolous stuff when we really need to be focusing on the important stuff like the content and the delivery. So I'll turn over to Megan right now, and she's actually going to talk about some of the design ideas for the outline for the cover. And the essence is that what we want to do is align what we present with the narrative that we're going out to the community with, okay?
So here we have, pardon me, we have a scale down the bottom to balance everything out. You'll see down the bottom there where it says insert here, this is where you'll put key issues and things that, you know, are out for consultation. So in the past, last consultation doc, there were things like the stadium, the theatre, climate change, all on the front cover. So that's, you know, what we're balancing here. You could have levels of service and things, and because it's your document, that's entirely up to you guys there. We've gone for black and white with pops of colour, and if there are ways that we can add more colour to it, it might be that we have one bucket there is a blue bucket and a green bucket, bringing it back to TDC. But essentially, it's very basic and trying to find that balance between being creative but also being budget friendly and conscious that that's what the message is that we're putting out to the community. Everything is open for discussion. It's just a mock-up that we've done at the moment just to get our ideas on paper. And we really want you to come up with a tagline there. So it could be voice your opinion. Everyone uses have your say, so we're going to challenge you guys to come up with something that you guys want to have in there.
Please say that again, sorry we couldn't hear.
I'd like to see an apostrophe in the it's for a start.
Yeah, we whipped this up together last night. Yeah.
It goes through a few screenings before we actually do that. Yeah. Okay, so I'll have you guys think about what you want that catchphrase to be for getting the community's input and engage. You can use have your say. It's done all around the country. It's worked every time.
Are you wanting it right now? Like,
Well, let's just park it. I want you to think about it, okay? And we'll get some of those ideas later, because I tend to find that if we actually just plant the seed, it'll be ruminating in the back of your mind and something will just pop up. If you get it at about 2 a.m., don't feel the need to text me, okay? But, and just remember, any of your ideas today, they're just ideas. There's no such thing as a bad idea. They're a draft, and if you have something and you think, oh no, maybe that's not good enough, say it anyways, because what you say may generate a spark in the next person to build on. So I find the best ideas come from the collective wisdom of many heads, okay? Right, so moving on. So again, we talk about the theme and the tagline of it's about balance, apostrophe in there. What we must include, now this is according to the regulations, okay? So even though we can be creative, we still need to be compliant. So the first thing that they talk about is they talk about identifying what the key issues are. And it's what you think are important to the community, and you also have to consider your significance and engagement policy. And that's where we actually look at, are we actually looking at engagement, empowering? Is it about informing? Is it just about getting some immediate feedback? To what degree do you really want the community's participation in this process? Then we talk about the key matters from the financial strategy and the infrastructure strategy. We don't put the full strategies in the consultation document. We just have a really quick couple of bullet points that come out from both of those documents that we include in there. We talk about the proposals for any changes to our funding system, including changes to our rating system. We haven't identified any significant changes aside from 2 targeted rates that we are looking at adding on for the bid and also to enhance the community board ones for their strategic plans. We talk about the impact of the proposals that we're going out to the community with on the rates and the debt. We use graphs, we use charts, we use a lot of visuals for that. We talk about the impact on the levels of service, okay, using graphs or charts if practicable, if we can actually do a visual representation. And there's lots of creative ways to do that. The roading unit, land transport unit, they have amazing visuals for a lot of that in their business proposals that they put forth to Waka Kotahi and NZTA. So, and because there's no such thing as a totally new idea, we may borrow some of their ideology because we know it works. We talk about the rates across the different categories of rating units, and that's when we talked yesterday about having sample rating properties. And I believe somebody asked about, you will have, like say, a residential property based on a land value of about 200K. Do we also do ones of different land values? Yes, we do. So for every type of differential, we use 3 samples of different property values or land values within that sample size. So altogether, I think you have something like 32, 33 different kinds of rating properties or sample rates that we put out there. We also have the report from the auditor, okay? So that is when Audit New Zealand actually just write, yes, this actually is a true and accurate representation based on really sound evidence to go out and consult with the community. Now, a lot of that stuff is kind of like the, how would you say, the boring stuff that it's important, and there are members of the community who are really interested in that. But we tend to condense that stuff to put it into a specific section that we really call like the finance section. So we have to make it in as plain language as we can, relatable so that the community understands it. We use graphics as much as we can to convey the key messages across. And you will see that as we develop it. Okay. So there's a certain structure that we use, and we actually always have the forward from the 2 Nigels, okay, from the mayor and the chief executive, which is a joint written statement just basically talking about a wee bit about the process, the opportunities, some of the issues, what council's grappling with, what it wants from its community. We give a bit of background context, including previous decisions already made about some of the things that will be coming up in this LTP. One of the things that we've actually talked about, and we mentioned it briefly yesterday when I talked about having you all involved in a video production, is talking about how council touches your day-to-day life through our activities. And there's still confusion in the community about that. You know, I've had people actually talking to me about, you know, council needs to do more about crime, et cetera, and I explain, okay, we can do some things around our planning to encourage community safety and resilience, but crime is actually a police matter, you know, and trying to define what we do versus what the regional council does, there's always that confusion. So we just kind of wanted to use some visual graphics, and I'm going to let Megan talk to what she came up with last night. It is very much a draft, okay? But it's a brilliant draft, in my opinion. We will talk about the key issues and the options for those issues, and looking at what those options present as an opportunity as well, because I think it's really important. When we use the term issues, people sometimes put a negative connotation to that word, so we really need to talk about where the opportunities are as well, because with your very robust and large CapEx work program, you are setting this community up for a really brilliant future. And I think we really need to emphasize that. And it's across the board. It's in our core infrastructure. It's also in our community facilities. So we need to talk about those opportunistic aspects of what it is we're going out there with. Of course, we have to talk about the finance, so that will be covered in this. And then we do the call to action, which is how do they make a submission? What are the key dates? What are the engagement events that they can actually come and meet the peeps? And also how they go about presenting their views at the hearings. Because we encourage people to actually come and speak to their consultation as well, because that gives you the opportunity to ask them some direct questions to get more detail or where they're coming from. And I think it actually helps to kind of build a better picture for some of the submissions that you will get. Okay, so I'll let Megan talk about what we're talking about for the proposed look and feel.
Thanks, Vincy. So yeah, we're going with a more black and white sepia colour theme with pops of colour for the consultation document. It's simple and concise. There's no busyness, and it's really basic and straight to the point, which is much like this long-term plan. We're going to utilise your council avatars and photos throughout, as well with being at some of our council facilities or areas like, for instance, the dog park or something like that, that people might not associate with council and things. So we've also created last night a grayscale town roadmap. So this is very much not to scale. You'll see that on the next slide. But this just kind of grays out all the things that council doesn't deal with, and then other things that council actually does. So, like your rubbish bins and, you've got your Egantai Art Gallery and all of those sorts of things. And we just want to use simple infographics to communicate the proportion and percentage of costs for each activity. So we've got a lot of hidden assets, underground with all of our water and things like that, which are costs that the community just don't see. So we want to kind of highlight that in a way, showing on the map what council does. So if we want to go to the next slide.
And we will say that this next slide, we're talking about simple and consistent. This next slide is a bit busy, but it shows the complexity of how much you do. Okay, so that graphic.
So we've modelled this based off Waiiti Road. Like I say, it's not to scale, but down the bottom we have Caroline Bay there. You can't see everything with that Teams link in this side. Can we get rid of that, Jess? Brilliant, thank you. So everything from the shoreline is what council is involved with, which is why we've got the water greyed out. We have rubbish down there. We've got OJ at the Sound Shell performing. We have Sea Play. We've got the Caroline Bay Aquatic Centre there. We come up and we've got public toilets. You'll see the bank is greyed out. Council doesn't have things, directly to do with the banks, but then we've got the theatre, and you'll see we've also got the library, the museum. While we don't have a lot to do with construction of homes, we do have building inspectors that head out there. And then as we go up, we've got the West End Hall there with civil defence. We've got the rubbish collection, walking dogs in public areas, if your dog gets off the lead, that's a council thing. And then we've got the stadium through to the Scenic Reserve and the Claremont Reservoir with the aeroplane heading to the Timaru Airport. So it's just a wee way to sort of explain to everybody what we actually do there.
Because we don't do it.
It's greyed out. Yeah, and same with the school and the supermarket as well as the rugby stadium here in town. So we've tried to model this off the Timaru area. What you don't see in the corner will be like an AA road map, like the one down in Bluff, where you've got all of our other districts, like Pleasant Point, Cave, Temuka, etc. You'll also notice that we do have some lines for our hidden assets on there. For example, we've got our water supply, our wastewater and our stormwater throughout portions of the map.
Sorry.
I guess on that, Megan, rather than have a gas station, I'd like to see a big pipe, because you look at all that and that we're not actually saying where we spend most of our money, except it's on a key on the little left-hand side.
This is not the one to quantify what we
No.
spend our money on.
This
No,
is
I
more
understand that, but this will be up the top with a visualisation, so we should have a reservoir, we should have other things that we actually spend our money on, I think. It's just an opinion.
We do have the Claremont Reservoir right at the top there.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of fun, but yeah.
Yeah, so what our next phase is we will be putting dollars to some of these as an infographic way for the community to know what things sort of cost.
And the idea is to use something like this as a basic of a video, and then we zoom in on certain aspects where we will actually be able to explain more comprehensively how much we're actually spending on that particular activity and or asset. And that's where you're actually going to get more of your focus. We also produce a pie chart that shows proportionally for $100, where are most of your dollars?
Understand that, but this is up the top and it's quite graphic. All I'm saying is it should reflect where we spend most of our money, because these are niceties, but some of them, just to me, we're not involved in banking, petrol stations.
Which is why visually, from a design concept, those are grayed out, but they're all part of the community. And it's just trying to show visually, only the things with colour are the things the
I
council
understand all
does.
that. You've asked us for feedback. Just
so we're
say
doing
yes
that.
or no. I don't need rebuttal every time I say something. You've asked for an opinion and I'm trying to give one.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, my thoughts on that are that, yeah, it looks good, but it's really, really busy.
It is busy.
And I don't know if we actually need to have those things in black and white about the things that we don't do, because there's lots of stuff that we don't do. But
there is.
maybe just accentuate those things that we do rather than the things that we don't. Just looks like it's too much.
That's a good
Yep.
point. Yep. And we'll take all of, we'll take all those on board. That's really great. Initial design concepts. So really, the idea is, let's find a level of comfort and we will come back with a couple of design concepts for you based on some of that. And we'll probably share those electronically and get you guys to give us your feedback that way. Would that help?
Can I,
Please do.
I'm thinking here, thinking, is it possible to have above ground, below ground? So instead of having it flat like that, so picking up Stu, picking up councillor, so you've got the roads,
Because then you can do a
big
huge
thing of
pipe.
roads, and then the big pipes everywhere, and then above ground you get your stadium and so forth.
And that's a side profile thing that you're talking about. That's a really good idea. And that can work so well in a video as well, because you can actually zoom in and do the profile thing. So really good concepts, yeah. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for working on this late last night, Megan. Okay. Okay, great. Now we're talking about what some of your ideas can be around the engagement strategies and the implementation of how we're actually going to do this. And this is really getting to the core of, it's about you. And this is where we're going to get some of the creativity and fun ideas that you guys might have. So there's the core stuff we must do, which is about your public meetings, and we're looking at places where you can actually have those. Now, every council before you uses this methodology. If it ain't broke, we're not going to fix it. So what we find, and Timaru more than most councils, you go out to where the community is, rather than going to a community hall at 7 o'clock on a cold evening, expecting everybody to come to you. So, and I know from experience at other councils that doesn't always work. So you go to where the community is. You've got a list of ideas of, like there's the Saturday markets, there's events, A&P shows, all of those type of things, if there's any coming up. And I believe there is something coming up, is there? In 1 week, in the Winchester one, right, okay. Yeah. So we may not have everything ready for that one. We absolutely could have a general just awareness type thing, but it wouldn't be LTP specific. Yeah. So we're talking about having the short day in the life video montage, where we're going to spend a couple of days filming you doing different things relating to council services. And it's just everyday things that people do throughout the district, but using you as the example. We're talking about having a bit of narration. Now, we have some very clever clogs inside council. Brendan Madley is a brilliant script writer, so we were looking at some narration. We've kind of nominated somebody who may do that professionally as a job, and has been known to do it from time to time for the council, to help us with that narration. We're talking about using generic TDC banners that can be used for all consultation in the future, rather than just developing a set only for this LTP, so that, you know, more bang for your buck. Yeah. Come talk to me, or yeah, let's talk Timaru, all of those things that you've had before. But even things like the teardrop banners and the pull-up banners, or just signage to actually identify that for future events that other units can use and other consultations that you have, because you have consultations much wider than just the LTP. This is your largest, but even for district plan or roading initiatives or future annual plans. So we want to kind of build up the reservoir of our stock of really good generic collateral we can use over and over, okay? That's about the bang for the buck, yep. We're talking about visiting schools and other centers where people of the community may be at. For instance, senior citizen centers or clubs, yeah, clubs. Quite often, if you want to actually reach, like I know in other communities, if we actually wanted to talk to Pacifica, we often went to church events that they might have, where they would have like a barbecue or a hungy or something like that, and that we were just there. And that's now bringing me to our group activity that we're actually going to get started on. So,
Sorry, just a couple of questions on that.
Sure.
In terms of engagement, do we look at other councils that are far more successful in engaging and see how they did it, whether it was issue-based or they had something clever? Because I accept all that, but it's run-of-the-mill what we do every time. So I'm looking to increase our engagement, and have we looked at councils that are successful at doing that?
Can I be honest? A lot of councils look to you because you are one of the more successful ones. But yes, there are, like some places in the North Island, and I know of some councils where you go to pubs. You know, you can do something very outrageous and very different. You can hold a one-day fest or a whole bunch. We are open to any ideas you may have. So rather than put it on officers that we come up with the ideas for everything for you to do, let's work together and come up with where you guys think, where your comfort levels are. I could come up with something outrageous. I had somebody in this room who appeared topless on A-frames, but it's about what you want to be involved with too. Okay, so what I'm going to,
It's quite interesting. Timaru doesn't have a town hall. It's quite, it's always staggered me. But the one area that we use the most for our events is the sound shell.
yeah.
And I think that that's really fantastic location for some of this.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we have identified, that you can have some here in the chambers, in the main buildings, drop in little pop-up things. But the sound shell, if you actually had some kind of event that you actually put on and brought people there, tie it up with things, because you've got Sea Play so close, and Sea Bay, and all of the other things. Have an event of some kind that attracts people to you.
I think we should just be going and targeting groups and speaking at their meetings. You know, like Lions, Rotary, Chamber.
You will do
All of
that.
those ones, garden groups.
Yep, you will do that. And that's what, as Councillor Piddington said, is pretty stock standard. So I love the idea you want to do something different. I think that's great. This is the opportunity to actually do it. And having something at one of our own facilities, like the sound shell, will be cost effective. It won't cost us a lot to actually run something like that. So what I'm actually going to invite you to do now.
Have we got the, sorry, Vincy, we got the stakeholder list, the one 3 years ago?
Yes, we do, but I want you to actually, that's like the core stock standard one, and I want you guys to actually come up as well with some of the members of officers and SLT to also come up with the ideas of who don't you hear from? Who don't you hear from? We know who you hear from all the time, but who don't you hear from? Yeah. So you have some of the best engagement tactics, and you actually have a higher return than a lot of other councils for your submissions and stuff like that, when you look to scale, obviously. So, and you're one of the few councils that don't do the 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night at a community center, where 4 or 5 people come up. So that's really good. So the engagement tactics that you have actually employed in Timaru have actually been highly regarded by other councils. This is a battle that all councils have. So what I'm actually going to invite you to do right now is I'm going to get you to actually pair up. So there's 4 groups of you, okay? So pick a partner. This is the elected members. Pick a partner. I'm going to invite the SLT will actually join each pair of you. So a member of the SLT will join different pairs of you.
I think it should be everyone in the room.
I'm getting to that, Councillor. Good idea. Great minds think alike. And then I'm inviting all the other members in the rank and file to actually join a group. So SLT group managers, out of your seats, please, and come and join. Now, OJ, if you want to sit on the other side of Sally, because then we'll have some separation between your groups. Okay. SLT, please join. You just pick a group and join. Okay. Yep. Yeah, split up. That's great. Mr. Dorn, would you like to join, please? Where did Miss Andrea go? Oh, she escaped. She escaped. She escaped. Oh, the little cheeky monkey. Okay. Okay,
do. They just enjoy the service and actually telling them what it costs, how we're doing it. So, and then we went to simple things like TikToks, short and brief. So, oh, you're still in.
So the stakeholder from what was just said was the users of our facilities. So facility users, I guess that's what we're talking about.
And also, you also identified like Temuka, okay, the Pleasant Point.
And then you've got different age groups in terms of what they're comfortable with, whether it's young people with texting and the phones, slightly older people go on the line. Yeah, we've been brainstorming, yeah. That's because we're the A team.
Right, get ready, Steph. Chamber of Commerce, Grey Power, service groups, so like Rotary, Lions, onto migrant community. We put mums and dads, young families, not just mums. Sporting groups. Oh, you've got that, sporting clubs. And then obviously we had our Point, Temuka, Geraldine, Winchester Cave communities, Pariora. Ratepayer Association, you've got that one. Iwi, government departments. Our interest groups, environmental groups, Eco Trust, etc. Yeah, we have 4 weeks. I asked that question. We're going to be busy. Port, Alpine, ARA, DHB type. Yeah. And then we've got our social services like Presbyterian Support Salvation Army. We also thought neighbouring councils, ECAN, our funders, so South Mid Canterbury Trust Aoraki, sorry. Youth engagement, extremely important. You've got that up there. And then larger companies like our DBs, Juice Products, Alliance, Frontieras, McCain's could be a good opportunity to talk to our large industries. Yeah, or manufacturing probably. And then we got really crazy and we thought tanker drivers and hairdressers because they talk to everybody. Thank you. So, yeah, we really started to think outside the square.
Sorry, Steve, can you add Christian Ministers Association? Because they actually do go out on Sunday and preach our message. And they oh no, but put Christian ministers as well, so if we can appeal to the ministers, then it's about how you get it out, and they'll talk about it, because they pray for us regularly. They do.
We might have to go wider than Christian.
Yes,
Yeah.
and other denominations.
But so as far as engagement, we wanted to spam everyone. Justin had some good ideas on that. QR code though, make it really easy for on our engagement, on posters, etc. A short lead-in video before people actually fill in the form. So we don't want to restrict them and we don't want to piss them off, but we want them to actually get a bit of information before rather than just rush to a form and. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so we do need a little bit of education. Then the TikTok, the scones and cup tea, and sausage sizzle with a branded napkin.
We've actually got the design for the branded napkin.
Yeah, the mayor's done the napkin. I don't know it'll be everyone's like.
Wasn't a great design.
Breaks and debt, half and half.
Yeah, 16%, 400 million. And a compliment, but you get a complimentary sausage.
guess with engagement, go to where the people are, like our art gallery.
There you go.
Yep.
Pop-ups in there, because the people are already going there, but advertise the time. And just with engagement, I wondered if there was a rates demand or anything like that in the time period. I think we probably missed it. But people look at their rates, therefore there would be just a one-pager.
Oh, like to insert in
Yeah.
the rates bill. A lot of them are electronic, aren't they?
Yeah, but can you not have another attachment to the email?
Good idea.
Oh, I can go. Thanks. I'm done.
It is costly though.
Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
It may be
Tell us.
Oh, do I get a water?
Yeah.
You're only trying to shut me up. Hang on.
Councillor Shannon, your team.
At schools for, boards and staff members, at facility users, supermarket, did I say that? Yeah, supermarkets.
Can I say something?
Yes,
I think the
jump in.
whole idea is actually want to get people to consult, not so much be sitting there in front of them telling them, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I mean, I think it would be quite good, you know, if each of us had 3 pull-up things and had some sort of slogan and a photo of us saying, you guys need to consult, help us make our decisions, it's up to you, and had 3 different slogans, and it was up to those people, or up to the councillors, to move them round to where they think they'll get their
Where the
best
people
bang
are.
for their buck. You know, like the supermarket, or it might be the farmer's market. Just go and pull it up, sit it there for the day, or for 3 hours. Yeah, call to action type thing, and then the councillors are responsible for moving them around to where they think they're going to get best bang for their buck.
We talked about the mayor having an A-frame, just drive behind the
Well,
bar.
seeing he's the mayor, he could have the he could have the A-frame. I don't know if I want an A-frame, but yeah, yeah. I just think that might get people, because the whole idea of this, isn't it, to get people to consult? Instead of actually preaching to them. The document's telling them what we're doing. We just need people to consult. Our biggest problem in this district is people don't consult. And then we can't make the decisions. And then when we do make the decision, everyone gets up in arms because we haven't made the decision that they necessarily wanted. So.
But the message is, if they don't tell, we can't hear what they don't say.
No, exactly. Or you can say just 3 different slogans, photo on each, pull it up, move it around yourself. It's up to you.
Without the call to action.
Exactly.
So you're identifying, have different props we can put all throughout the community with the call to action.
Yeah, and then the councillors just move them around.
Okay.
We did just, we did talk about we'll get a couple of front pages that tow the concrete mixer, go back to towing the concrete mixer, and it's about infrastructure, so it's about focusing on that core capital investment.
Yeah, concrete mixer.
Yeah.
Hire a concrete mixer.
Yeah. You want to get in the news somehow. You want some really interesting news bites.
It was effectively mostly about going to them, to the clubs, to the club rooms, to the RSA. Precisely, yeah.
We might go from hero to zero on this because we didn't really cover it. But Michelle thought about podcasts with Stephen as well, you know, weekly podcasts on issues. Apparently people listen to those. So that's good. What we think we do need to hold public meetings on key priority topics down at our Caroline Bay Hall, which is our town hall, Mr. CEO, and even My Way vans, because they are really effective. So we'd probably need to check because they did change their rules a little bit, but you know, they go everywhere. So, you know, thinking about that, and it is a cost-effective way to promote what we're talking about. And then Michelle came up with which I really like too, is a bit of a slogan like, join the conversation. I like that. So I was going to take the glory on that, but I didn't. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My idea didn't make the paper.
Oh, sorry.
I think one of the, if you want to get to families, you've got to find a way of actually getting the kids entertained while you're talking to parents. So, you know, if you had some sort of down at sea play, if you enhance that even further with some blow up castles and give out some balloons and some candy floss, well, whatever. If you do that sort of stuff and then the parents can engage, I think you would find it'd be quite popular.
So that's
Yeah, down the playground. It is good. Yeah.
But this is using the kids to actually get to the parents.
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any time to actually discuss amongst ourselves. But I like the idea personally of the drop-in sessions, and I know that a lot of people think drop-in sessions don't necessarily work because you don't get like a large engagement from people. But I think if you have a point of difference with those drop-in sessions, so someone mentioned entertainment, and it might not be like a pop-up castle or whatever, or blow-up or whatever, but you know, things that will attract the media, that will make them want to come along, and so then we can springboard from that, so they're saying positive things about the events that we're doing, because you might not reach a whole lot of people on that particular day, but then from the media coverage that you get from it, you get the extra sort of bounce on it. I was just going to mention Timaru District T-shirts, for example. Like, they did one in Waimahi a wee while ago. I think we may have done them in Timaru before as well, but, you know, with all the different place names around them, and, like, if you turn up to a drop-in session, you could go in the draw to win one of those or whatever. So prize draws, that sort of stuff, to encourage people to come along, just to make it a bit more interesting for them, and so they can take away something. And it could be maybe we give away, like, you know, prize packs for families to Sea Bay or that sort of thing, you know. So that was an idea that I thought of. Any other ideas?
No, do we have anything written down, Stephen?
An engagement?
Yeah, they were sort of going to events that are popular, like Children's Day. I think we're keeping up with that. Even thinking outside of the district and things that are popular, like the Mackenzie NP show, where people from Timaru are actually going to that, so you could catch them there. Yeah, and then working around with places like Multicultural Aoraki with any things they're holding, like the Multicultural Fest and that sort of thing. And then, say, Westpac runs first home buyer seminars, so turning up to those things as well. So any of those kind of small fry ones.
I had another one, and that was sound bites from councillors. Really good for radio. Just saying. But like, you know, like a 30-second donut that has, for example, the slogan, whatever the slogan is, coming into it, maybe a wee music bed underneath and a wee outro, and then just fill it up with, you know, a councillor saying in the middle of it somewhere about a particular part of the long-term plan. Package it up quite nicely like that, and that also takes away the whole fear of doing something like live. You know, if it's recorded and it's edited and yeah. Thought that was quite a good idea, and I like the idea of short videos too, I think, to outline some of the issues. I don't know where you'd play them, whether it be TikTok. I'm not au fait with TikTok, but, you know, Facebook or whatever.
We
Reels.
did pretty good engagement on Facebook. We did videos last time, didn't we, Stephen?
Yep.
And that was good.
Oh, the digital billboards. Yeah, they're quite expensive though, I think.
This gentleman here has been on those billboards. Yeah, those digital ones. They're really good.
The other thing that hasn't been mentioned, just one more thing, sorry, was we haven't actually mentioned anything about giving people a chance to invite us to talk. So do we have some sort of campaign? Yeah, we do. We would tell people, hey, look, if you want to find out more about the long-term plan, then get in touch. We'll send a counsellor to come and have a chat.
Yeah. Send us your I think that you can actually make that as, we'll come to you. And,
Maybe.
you know,
I don't know if that'd be a prize for some people.
Keeping in mind that some of the counselors who aren't here are also going to have the opportunity to nominate some of their preference groups or ones that they want to establish a relationship with. And I'm not saying that you're going to get all three of your favorites, because we are going to mix it up, but we will try to come up with a schedule of different particular target groups, events, and what have you, because we're going to start sending out invitations. And the idea of invite a counselor to come and speak, loving that idea. Okay, this is great. Okay. Thank you very much, Counselor. So our process from here, we will make contact with a lot of these groups in the next few weeks and then come up with a schedule for you. A lot of it will be dependent on when you're available in your diaries, et cetera, et cetera. Also, some of the ideas that you came up with around like a family-focused event, we'll start looking at some potential dates for that and come up and try and flesh out those ideas a wee bit more so that we can actually present to you kind of like a menu of events and groups, evenings, days, what have you. And a lot of it, I understand that many of you have your own full-time positions that you do, so it will be dependent on availability, and we accept that. And there may be times that you have to step in for somebody else. So thank you very much for having taken part in that. Okay. So now we actually kind of get, this is still working with the two of you. And SLT, you may choose if you want to take part in this, but this is really about where counselors who have attended all of the budget workshops, and you were there at all of the AMP roadshows that we did back in October and November, as you recall, and you got to identify some of the issues and the opportunities in the various activities by actually talking with the activity managers and seeing what they actually are dealing with, facing, and concerned about. And I think some of them also took the opportunity while you were there to actually talk about some of their exciting projects as well. So I want you to tap into that experience that you had prior to Christmas, and with your neighbor, I want you to actually try and identify 3 key issues that you think have come out of the budget workshops and also from your AMP roadshows. So what are the things that are concerning you the most with your neighbor? And try and narrow it down to 3. If you have more than 3, that's fine. This is just brainstorming ideas. So if I give you a few minutes to discuss with your neighbor and come up with those, and then we'll come back as a collective and share that. And again, we'll write a list of those up on the board.
Yeah, my question was just around, when you say about what the key issues will be, is that what you think the key issues will be for the public or for the ratepayers, or is it the key issues that you see that we see? Does that make sense?
I'm hoping they're not too far different, because I'm hoping the things that you see will be based on your experience representing your constituents that you think they should be concerned about.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, councillors, so what we're going to do is our lovely scribe Steph at the board, who's wearing a lovely ensemble today, she will be recording your thoughts about the ideas that you've come up with, and I'm thinking that some of you may come up with similar themes. And so she'll just put a tick next to something if it's a repeat of somebody else's idea. So rather than starting with the mayor again, because he's always first and the pressure's on you, we'll go one step over. So the pressure's now on Councillor Shannon and Councillor Oliver. So you can talk first about what you've identified with.
Thank you very much. Very difficult to keep it at 3, isn't it? Very, very difficult. We started on looking at infrastructure and the funding of that infrastructure and the impact of depreciation and the funding of the depreciation for the infrastructure and its renewals. That was a massive theme across everything we tried to work through to achieve a balanced budget in due course, is one. The funding of and the prioritisation of capital projects, be they above or below ground. Revenue, the challenges with revenue there, including government funding, grants and subsidies, and the inflationary pressures on debt, council-specific inflation on the things that we do, not a basket of goods as such. They encompass a lot of things, don't they? Yeah, inflation and the financial pressures of that, capital projects and funding of infrastructure.
Can I just, sorry.
Please do.
Can I just ask a quick question? I just think it would be really good in the document to have a very simple analogy of what depreciation means, because I don't think anyone gets that.
You don't get it.
And having it, why we have to do it, and the whys in that of why we do it. And the other thing is, what does levels of service mean?
Actually mean, yep.
That would be really good if that was in the document, because we talk about it a lot here, and I guess people watching this probably don't talk about it as such, but it would be good to have that in the document.
The thing about local government being its own beast, it has its own language, and it's a matter of making that language understood when we're going out to the community with it. So I take your point that we need to keep it really clear and simple what we mean. And I'll come back to the diagram because that's what that is meant to actually show a wee bit. Okay, so thank you very much, gentlemen, for that, and absolutely take your point, Councillor. Ladies, would you like to actually? Yes, please.
We will. So focus areas, we had the 3 water, road and community facilities. So we feel they are our key issues and priorities and focus areas. Community for like theatre, stadium, libraries, pool, gallery, that gallery, that art gallery and stuff. Yep. And then when we said water, we mean like the state of our infrastructure needs to be a focus for us, and obviously the same for roading.
Which ties in very well to what was up above as well. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Parker, Councillor Jackson?
We know the good people at home watching, we know how engaged they are, which is fantastic, but there's a huge part of the population that aren't engaged. For those that will get engaged, and we hope there are more this time around through the way in which we go about doing our engagement process, but I think probably between Sally and I, we came up with 3 things that we thought were pretty big. Number one is the 15% rate rise that'll be a big talking point for people. I see there was a headline this morning in the paper, "Will break people." So, you know, there's going to be a lot of debate about that. So that's going to be the big one. Number 2, Theatre Royal debate. And I know that comes with the Heritage Centre, and the stadium is also wrapped up in that as well, but it's the theatre that stands out for most people because of the price tag. So that's going to be a really big talking point. And us being able to show people that we are being prudent and we are making some good decisions based on good evidential information. I mean, yeah, that one's going to play out as it will play out. The other one was the state of the water infrastructure. We don't want to end up like, you know, a lot of people are talking about it, like Wellington with all their leaks, etc. So we think that's going to be a big topic, especially on the back of what we've done in the past with Three Waters. And just to add to that, sorry, it's a fourth thing, but just general transparency. Public will be talking about that, about, you know, are the figures true and clear, and can they understand them, and can they understand the figures in a way that is palatable? So that's what we thought.
And I think that leads transparency about trust.
Yes.
Can they trust the story that we're telling and what you're saying when you're out there?
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. And to conclude, thank you very much.
Interesting, that one, isn't it? Because they get a chance every 3 years, which is called democracy, to elect people that they trust. And a lot of people still out there just trust people to go out there and deliver. And you know, that is what this table is for. So, but I think we get away in that we get caught in the well-being sign. We get caught in the well-being maze a little bit, and I think we forget that actually a lot of what we do is just provision of infrastructure. It's that simple, whether it's community infrastructure or roads and water, to the lady's point. But infrastructure deficit is sort of one of those things. I think that's something that people understand across the country, and so I think that's sellable. But our conversation was very much around, and the key word that Councillor Piddington used is context, and it's around some of the other things that have been talked about. So it's a bit of a journey of education. It's around people understanding the Te Mata Arawai and the economic regulation that's coming in then, and the need to invest in those spaces. It's giving some real, to your point around the headline, you know, other provincial numbers in actual numbers versus percentages, because there again, even with 15%, if all the other provincials are going 15%, the people are still living in one of the cheapest regions in the country, and they get lost on that. And then it's giving some balance through this, slightly off topic, but, you know, versus all those other bills that have gone up. You know, you lose a hell of a lot of money going to the supermarket, power bill, you know, petrol, all those things, and it's just giving some balance, because people think that rates can stay low, whereas, you know, and everything else is rising, but we've got contractor costs and, you know, increases of 15%, and 60-odd million of what we spend our money on is contractors. So.
And the only other thing is, I think somewhere we need to tell the people what we've left behind, because we're always accused of not making decisions, but we've decided not to do the art gallery, that extension. We went, they saw the great pictures. City town, we're going to spend 30 million in the next 10 years, according to the last long-term plan. So we need to have a bit of a reflection and say, well, we promoted these last time, and they're no longer in there because of these reasons, because it shows we are not spending willy-nilly, if you know what I mean. We have made some hard decisions to get where we are.
Sorry, Vincent, could we have a copy? I cannot find it online or on the hub of the last consultation document.
I will be sure that it's on the hub for you today. Sorry. As a matter of fact, I'll have the last two, because I think that's pretty important, because it gives some of that background context to issues we're still talking about today. That is great. Councillors, that was really useful from us as officers, but we're actually going to keep working in this space at the moment. Now what I want you to do as a pair, Each pair of you, I want you to actually now try to identify the comments or concerns from the public you think you may hear around those topics that you have identified and something that maybe another group has identified. Just come, I'm sure you have the sound bites in your head and you probably have already put some voices to them, but let's try and identify what kind of feedback can you hear when you're at the petrol station pumping your petrol into your car and somebody pulls up. What do you think they're going to say to you? Okay, counselors, I'll give you about 1 more minute, and then we're going to come back and discuss those collectively. Did you find that easier to do? I'm saying that you probably get a lot of those comments in your everyday life anyway. Okay, so this time we're actually going to start with Councillor Scott and Councillor Pye to kick off the conversation of what are the kind of comments you think you are going to hear?
So we had, we'll start at the bottom with the community facilities, obviously around the theatre, anything from it's a waste of money, kidding, stop the madness, to get on with it, every town deserves a theatre, so one extreme to the other. Roading, people forget when roads are good because they don't notice it, so you only ever get bad feedback on the roads, potholes everywhere, roads are rubbish kind of narrative. And the water, mainly from the rural communities that have been on boil water notices for long times, but generally you don't hear a lot of feedback on the water because people take it for granted. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parker.
So the comments that we thought we might hear is unaffordable. Councils don't know what they're doing. Council should only worry about core infrastructure and cut out the vanity projects. Get on with fixing the slippery tiles.
That'll go on forever, mate.
Just get on with it and get the things done you said you would.
Okay, thank you for that. Your Worship.
Before we got distracted and went on a tangent, we were mainly basically the headlines today, you know, the 15%, 39 in 3 years. It'll be all about the money.
Okay, so affordability and just the rate increase, okay, which we have up there. Gentlemen.
Actually, on that, because
Could you turn the mic towards you? Sorry.
it's the opportunity cost of $1, isn't it? So the problem is if we don't spend it now, you know, what is the flow-on effect? And we're seeing that in Wellington.
You pay for it later.
Yeah, and that's, you know, the key narrative that we've got to be talking about is what does it buy you today rather than fixing it later. And if we don't do some of this investment, well then it's going to cost future generations a hell of a lot more.
Absolutely agree. OJ and I were talking about, you know, can we afford it? But what we can't. What was it like?
Can we afford not to?
Yeah,
It was, can we afford it and can we afford not to do it?
So.
And one of the things I think people underestimate when we say, okay, we're not going to replace or do a particular CapEx thing, to actually keep it operational, your OPEX goes up, and in the end, you still have to fix that thing. So overall, you spend more money on it because you've been sweating it out with the extra OPEX costs, plus the costs increase when you do actually get to the stage where you fix it, which is where we're at with a lot of our water, quite frankly.
And part of the challenge for this too is going to be, you know, people are going to say, well, what do you know today that you didn't know yesterday? And that's going to be, you know, something we're going to have to get our heads around. It's like, well, why 3 years ago didn't you have, you know, $300 million worth of water in your, you know, LTP? So.
And that's a fair comment, and it is because of the water reforms that we had to put investment into doing much more assessments and a lot more of the critical analysis for the entities, but that actually triggered, and we uncovered a lot of things that weren't evident before because of the investment into the investigations.
Yeah, and sorry to give that some perspective, you know, a lot of those, there's about $100 million, what I call really good debt, that's just sitting in the water projects, you know, so, and that was a lead-in from councils before us, so it probably goes back to a, you know, almost 10 years ago where it was identified, and this is, the flow-through is actually now, a lot of that planning's been done, and this is actually, you know, where the rubber hits the road, and So yeah, we've got to be careful that we don't blame those that came before us, because if you look at Downlands, that was a 10-year project to get a lot of that water infrastructure, in place.
And to recognise also, I know that there's a lot of conversation from some councillors about the increased debt, but it's because the last 2 or 3 councils have focused on improving the infrastructure and doing some of that overdue work. So these costs have gone up over the last 2 or 3 terms of council. They're at a particular high now because of the culmination of a lot of things.
And I think that goes back to the original purpose of, councils was to, to do infrastructure basically, and that's where people don't compare ourselves. But actually, one of our closest comparative would be utility companies that are providing lines and those sorts of things. But, and that's the reality of the core that we do, but it's not the way we sell ourselves. So we need to get back to basics, and that, partly goes to the change in the Act, whether you like it or not, but they pulled infrastructure out of the Act, and you throw the 4 well-beings in, and that's where you end up in quite a fluffy situation where, the likes of, various councils have focused on the fluff and not the infrastructure.
To be fair, a lot of your infrastructure addresses those 4 well-beings. So it's a matter of building that narrative to explain to people, because first and foremost, councils were established to protect public health, and that is through safe water and looking at amenities.
But the problem with the well-beings, it can take you anywhere, whereas the word infrastructure, we understand that.
Exactly. Okay. And to conclude, gentlemen.
Scotty and I have got written down here. Theatre Royal being blamed for the 15% rates increase. Still not being able to fix our roads. Being told to focus on the basics, our core businesses of water, roading and footpaths, rubbish, etc. And government making decisions for council and ratepayers. Council having to suck up some costs that we've got government putting stuff on us, like, for instance, fluoridation, and sort of getting more and more pressures put on us from central government to have to enable stuff for them.
Totally agree. And that has been an ongoing tension, that the more regulation that comes through, quite often the central government policy people, policymakers, don't consider the implications of the implementation of those things on local residents, and what it means for councils having to front that. So you're often the arm that is tasked with implementing some of the great ideas without any consideration of what the cost of those great ideas would be. So.
Yeah, and that is the water standards and the likes, isn't it? That all of these things were driven from Wellington, the whole unfunded mandate idea, if you like. But again, back to the Theatre Royal thing, there's been a fairly determined effort by some to control a narrative with the Theatre Royal is to blame for figures that we're looking at. And we're going to hear that until that narrative changes, that it is just a theatre. There's no mention of the museum and the other aspects of it and potentially what it can do for the community. But at this stage, the narrative is get rid of the theatre and our rates will miraculously be lovely and affordable. And we need to get it across that that is not the case.
And I think we highlighted that yesterday when we actually presented a budget model when we took community facilities out. It actually didn't change a lot of your rates because your rates are based a lot on the everyday OPEX, which is quite high, and also paying the interest and the depreciation. And when you're borrowing for large ticket items, that doesn't impact your rates to the same degree. So a very small percentage of your rates, year in, year out, are actually attributed to your big capital project items because they are spread over sometimes the life of the asset, but usually 25 to 30 years with intergenerational equity. And that's a concept that's really difficult to explain because, and it's easy to pick on one-line items like the theater or the stadium or the art gallery. Whereas with, for instance, in our water infrastructure where we're spending far more money, there's multiple lines and it's hard to kind of distinguish one or two things. And the renewals program is extensive.
I mean, if you think about why you vote at a general election, as an example, a lot of people get hung up on one issue, but we forget about, you know, it's like those emotive things like abortion or what have you. But there's a lot of people that actually don't just read the headline, they read the entire story. You know, they're intelligent, educated, they will find some balance in that. And I think one really positive is that the articles have got the full balance of our conversations in there. That's the wonderful thing about, you know, live streaming. So there'll be a lot of people actually out there reading and they won't be saying anything to us, but they will see and they will understand the need for investment. So we will hear, and it'll be more than the squeaky wheel. It will be the people in the low fixed incomes, those that have concerns and what have you. But there'll be a lot of people out there that, you know, will actually say, well, you know, councils need to get off and do this work, because what is the future? There again, you know, we fought to keep that local influence and control, and if we don't do this investment, we won't have that. You know, the future of the district won't get to vote councils because it will get amalgamated to whatever that looks like. It could be a Canterbury model, it could be, you know, national models. They won't exist if we don't get on and do the basics, which is that core infrastructure.
I think that comes to the point where we have to make sure that we present that balance in the media of all of the issues and the thought and consideration that this council has put into addressing them. And it is hard to kind of refute or counteract some of the narrative when it's not narrative that we've had any direct involvement in, and everybody has the right to their opinion, and the media is there first and foremost to actually be the people's voice. So we make sure that when we're out there in the public and whatever we release, we produce the balanced view that actually shows all the evidence and the integrity in which you've made the decisions you have made. Right. Okay, so moving on, what we're trying to do now is look at some clear issues for the consultation document to be focused on. And when we keep talking about balance, because the ultimate tension between the two dichotomies is really about what does it cost, rates and the debt against your levels of service. Because yesterday when we were talking about some of the levels of service and you're talking about raising some of the KPIs, the issue with that is sometimes it will actually raise the rates because you need more resource to actually deliver that level of service. So higher levels of service come at a higher cost. So it's about the balance. And when we talk about levels of service to the community, they don't quite understand what that means. I take your point on that. And it's basically, what do we buy for our money? From a ratepayer, this is what it costs. What do we get for it? That's what we say with a level of service. It's what you get from council for the rates that you actually pay. And it's not just ratepayers we're talking to, because your residents who may be renters or even visitors, they still contribute to the cost of your levels of service, either through fees or charges, or if they're renters, the rates bill is incorporated in within the rent, and they are users of your service. So we really talk about the community. The levels of service are not just for your ratepayers, it's for your community. We focus on the ratepayers because that's where we get a lot of our revenue from. But ratepayers who have rental properties also get some of that money back through the rents that they charge. So your residents are also paying rates, it just may not be directly. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So we've come up with a list here based on what you've actually said. You've talked about rates increases, and that's come through with 3 out of 4 of you. Talking about the conflicting opinions, looking at the roads and what's the word next to roads there? Sorry. Oh, the complaints about the roads. I know the roading unit bear the brunt of a lot of those. Okay. And then we're talking about water, and we only tend to kind of hear people talk about water when something goes wrong, not about when it goes right. So there is that element of taking it for granted. And it's about the infrastructure associated with that water, because that's where the expense is. Okay, the unaffordable aspect. And when we talk about unaffordable, I think that comes, that's linked into that rates increase, isn't it? Yeah. Get on with it. And then you're going to have your 2 camps. Just get on and do it. Or why are you doing that? Yeah. Change what you do. Okay? I was going to say that was about what have we learned? What have we learned since the last LTP? And we've learned a lot. And we have to share that newfound knowledge. And we've talked about this, that the theater is blamed for the bulks of the rates increase when that's not the reality when you work out how rates are calculated. Okay. Focus on the basics, which is water, roads, and rubbish, okay? And then we go, I'm sorry, Steph, I can't read that from here. Okay, and that links to our affordability issues for having to do the mandatory things that are imposed. And the last one there is intergenerational equity, okay, which is linked to our affordability and applying for the service. Okay. Some of the conversations that we were having before, we had talked about the WTF Timaru, Water Transport Facilities. I don't know where you were, Councillor, with that. Water Transport Facilities, okay? And those are really 3 key things that you deliver. So your tension now is what you have to balance up is what's your tolerance for risk against what are the community benefits. So what do we lose as a council, be it credibility, trust, or being able to deliver certain things? But what benefits do the community get from the decisions that you are actually making? So for their increased rates, we can say what tangible things do they get, as in a new theater, a new stadium, safe water, but how does that benefit them? Okay. And feel free to actually comment on that, because what I'm trying to get to is where we position this consultation document, like what is it we're going out there to ask the community to give us feedback on, and how do we position that? And I'll talk a wee bit about the accompanying information that will go with whatever we come up with. Rates and affordability is obviously a big issue that's actually come up. The competing priorities between the things like water and roading with some of our community facilities. That tension is actually up there. And getting on with it. which is a very common thing that we actually are talking about. So I heard you saying over there something about resiliency. Would you like to comment about that?
Well, we're making the improvements with our waters will increase and ensure community resiliency. So, so when you flush the toilet will flush. When you turn the tap on, it will work. It builds resiliency for our industrial area at Washdyke, for primary production, so economic well-being, lots of aspects of day-to-day life. So that's where I was coming from.
Thank you. Anybody else like to add to that?
I probably just think we're putting our head in the sand. If we think the rest of the country is talking about double-digit rate rises, it is what it is. And if we think we're not going to do that, we're just doing what we've talked about councils before us, and I don't mean the preceding one, I mean many, many years ago, who just didn't pay for their share and put the burden on future generations. It's, yeah.
And not, you know, defending councils from 30 years ago, because it's, you know, it is a historic thing. You know, but governance is served with the information that's presented, and I think it was just the way councils delivered, the mentality, even at the, you know, the engineer was sweat the asset, and, you know, and the world has changed. So it's not specifically around, to your point, it's not necessarily around blame, it's just painting our history. We're here, and how do we move forward? But yeah, just get the head out of the sand.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Yeah,
we're not going to solve any problems if we're just kicking the can down the road again. If we think that we can just go, let's you know, have rates at 5% or 7% or whatever's palatable and affordable, we're just going to dig ourselves into a bigger hole.
I agree. That's what I was going to add to that, was we do no one any favours by having low. The cost of living, the cost of delivering services has increased significantly over the last 3 to 4 years, and I think you said the other day, Vincey, we have to be brave, and unfortunately, you know, a few years ago we weren't brave, and so we're paying the consequences for it now, and so we have that challenge of upping the game, unfortunately.
I, from my layperson's point of view, from living outside the district and having seen what's gone on before, I would say the last couple of councils have been braver, but it's requiring you to have even more courage to make the harder decisions, because the issues are far more complex because we know more about them. So it requires more courage to face a deeper issue.
I just wonder whether some of the discussion needs to centre around, while we can look at the expenses in terms of our staffing and our other costs, yes, they can probably be reduced, but they can't be reduced to the full effect of the deficit we're facing at the moment. Now, that deficit is due to revaluing our assets. So if you look at the 22-23 annual report, there was a part revaluation done of our water. What happened? We ran a $16 million deficit. Now that $16 million increase in depreciation is filtering through into this one, and we've got it down a bit, but that's really the conversation. Now, we have to work out how do we actually have that conversation with the public so as they can, like you said earlier, the understanding of the depreciation, that it's actually about replacing assets. And we know that we're going to have to replace those assets, particularly water. You know, just in the last 2 weeks, we've had 2 instances. One of the schools got closed for a day because the water main burst. We've also got Pleasant Point, something's burst out there. We've got our Geraldine that we're going to bring forward. So there's a whole bunch of things with water that need to be sorted. And we're now in the position to actually sort that as a community. And we've got to really have that conversation. How do you want that sorted? And I think your stadiums and your theatres, I think they're a sideshow that are so visible to us all, so they become the focal point. We've got to shift the focus to that water, the three waters. And somehow we've got to get that conversation going.
Interesting, Michelle, you made the comment around what is affordable, and it's such an interesting word because it's so emotive and it's perspective based on an individual. They're making what is affordable. Yeah, you're totally in their position and what they think is, a basic need. And I think, and the reality is we have numbers done around living wage and all those sort of things. So there will be some factual data out there on what exactly is affordable with a basket of goods. And I'm not saying I want to push back and say, hey, well, actually, no, you're wrong. But I just think it's nice to be able to say, well, actually, affordability, even with these increases in Timaru, and this might come back and actually not reflect the information I'm seeking, but it'd be nice to do that, grab that, and how we, because there'll be an affordability index or there'll be some data out there.
In the consultation documents, we do have like a shopping list of your CPI things, like how much it costs for a week for groceries, how much it costs for a week for insurance, how much it costs for things like your petrol, et cetera, and we put how much it costs a week for your rates in that mix. So we actually have some kind of a basis of comparison to show the real costs in monetary terms, in dollars, not percentage, in dollars, for what it costs each week for an average household.
I think it's, sorry, Gav, I think it's more than that. And I'm assuming it'll probably line up to some extent or similar to, where we stand, well, may and may not, but, on the provincial rates, as an example, towards the low end. But we'll be able to, ED might even, VT might have some information on where we sit as a region as far as affordability, and that will capture some of that potential.
I guess for me, and I think about it holistically, just as a ratepayer, is that the biggest problem is that all these costs are way outstripping what people are getting as wage rises, and it's getting to that point. The balance is way out of whack, and that's what people have got in their minds. Like how much further they go. And I get the conversation, Nigel, around we do have some of the cheapest wages in our country, cheapest rates in the country, but we have some of the cheapest wages. We have lots of people on fixed incomes. We have lots of people in the agricultural sector that are only getting and things like that. So that's a bit of a concern as well for me, that it's just outstripping wage rises. Not by 2, not by 3, but by 4 times.
What'd you say? Only $30 an hour? No, and that's why I think that data's important to present exactly that. But if you take $100,000 and you get a 5%, pay increase, and if you look at the basket of goods that you need to, your fixed costs as a factor out of that extra $5,000, say it's an easy number to kick around, is not likely, even with these rate increases. You say out of that 16% rate increase, average rate, $3,000, what's that, 330, so out of that $5,000, your increase in rates is only a percentage of that. So, you're spreading that increase across. So I get the narrative, but it's highly complicated.
I totally get that too, but the biggest problem is interest rates as well. I mean, if you fix your interest rate like I do every year, I'm paying $200 a fortnight more this year than what I was paying last year. On top of that, huge insurance increases through climate change, car expenses and all that. So it is starting to really hit home for a lot of people. And, I totally get the fact that they have to be, we're at 15% for a reason. And that reason is we've got to get stuff done. But I just want to emphasise there is a lot of people hurting,
Oh, no, I
that we don't always see. Because people, when they're hurting financially, don't come out and tell you that. That's the biggest issue. They just bottle it all up. You know, I'd hate to think what people are getting as far as tax credits and all that, because there'll be a hell of a lot of people getting tax credits and stuff like that because they aren't meeting their needs.
Yeah, look, so this is an interesting conversation. So if we don't do what we are sitting in that LTP as far as infrastructure investment, we will get criticised by any colour government for not doing what we are meant to do outside of the costs that are sitting there out there in the environment, such as Interact. And totally agree. And we're seeing, you know, increases through food banks. And I'm not to say that we should definitely be conscious of it. But also, it's not our role. Part of that role sits within central government around the affordability. So we've just got to be conscious of that we don't, although we should have in sight the affordability, but it shouldn't necessarily be the reason for making a decision, because actually that role sits with central government around rates, rebates, all those sort of things. You know, we should be, probably part of this is actually we need to continue you know, speaking to government around increasing rebates for fixed income. You know, what do those sort of things look like? But they're not, unfortunately. Love to have more control over those things, and then you can look at it as a more complete picture, but we don't. That's not our role.
I'd also, in supporting of both of these narratives that you've just shared, I also want to highlight, when we're talking about rates increases, we have concrete deliverables that we can actually show for those increases. When you're talking about interest rate increases, petrol increases, increases at the supermarket, you're talking about companies with shareholders making record profits. There's a distinct difference for some of those between when council increases rates, it's because we are addressing some core basics to allow for everyday life. It's not about you guys actually getting extra dividends. When you're increasing your rates, you're not pocketing the money, you're spending it 100% in that community, and that's a distinct difference from a lot of those other increases that people are unfortunately faced with, and they have very little control over. And I agree with that, that sentiment. So we have a responsibility to actually consider the hardship factor. We investigate it. We'll present you with what some of our high-level analysis can actually show based on the average income per household that we're actually talking about, and keeping it in perspective with the wider cost of living. But the mayor is right that it is not our sole responsibility alone to carry the burden of hardship for our community. We have a strong role in advocacy and partnerships. We can offer for people on fixed incomes, especially older people, about the rates remission, postponement. We have some mechanisms available to help some of those people in those certain situations. It's not highly taken up in this community, so we could do something more about that.
Yeah, I mean, rates, we're sidetracking a little bit, but, you know, rate rebates is interesting. Any person on a fixed income that is eligible, I'll mention to, and often the conversation is actually, you know, they're not eligible because they've got other investments and other things. So although there is a high degree in the community, and we should be reaching out and making sure that those ones can access it, but there's a lot that simply can't because they've got other income sources.
I think the important thing is we're going out to consult. So we've got a set of financials, that's our starting point. Between now and adopting our long-term plan, it's incumbent on myself and the SLT to unturn every stone and find as many savings as we possibly can without destroying the organisation. And that goes hand in glove with that consultation. So we consult, we hear the public, but our job is also to really keep examining what else can we do to try and bring that rate burden down.
Which is great, because it talks about the partnership between the operational arm and the elected arm. So the work doesn't stop in-house while you're out there talking to the community, which is really good to hear. On that note, I think we will conclude for lunch at the moment. Lunch is provided for you, councillors. When we come back, we are actually going to talk about, come back to the clear issues for the consultation document. So whilst you're in having your lunch, I want you to think and have some conversations amongst yourselves about what do you think your key thing for the document to focus on. We have some ideas as staff that we can use as an umbrella, but it is your document. It is your conversation that you're having with your community. So have a think about that. We'll come back for lunch, from lunch at 1 o'clock, about 1 o'clock. And thank you to the online audience for enduring this workshop for this morning. And thank you, councillors. Some good comments come out.